The Celtic lineages are the S116, also known as P312 branch of the Indo-European haplogroup R1b. The Hallstatt regions include a mix of R1a and R1b, excluding the Greco-Etruscan R1b L23, the Germanic R1b E0006, and R1b L238, and the Proto-Celto-Germanic L11, L51, and L150 variants. Hallstatt Celts also have a small amount of E1b1b. S116 includes subclades associated with the non-Indo-European languages such as Basque and the ancient Gascon and Iberian languages. The Atlantic megalith builders, Irish, Welsh, Scottish, Breton, and Basques, only come from R1b. Both groups have a high incidence of the gene for red hair. True Celtic ancestry shows up on DNA tests as Central European, whereas Atlantic megalith builders are lumped into a generic Irish category. Much of the confusion stems from the fact that although Celts did originally speak Gaelic, they eventually adopted German and abandoned their mother tongue, whereas the megalith builders that they conquered abandoned their Proto-Basque language for the Gaelic that they speak even today. The Proto-Italo-Celtic people spread from Central to Western Europe in the Bronze Age, starting around 4,500 years ago. The Celts became a people during the Bronze Age, the second millennium before the Common Era, in the Anatolian Peninsula. Many Celtic names derive from the practice of building castles and worshipping the sun. They ruled from Hallstatt, Austria during the Iron Age, from 800 to 450 BCE, and later from Latin. The Celts had an extremely wealthy empire built on mining rock salt in the Alps and trading amber obtained from modern-day Russia. They traded with the Greeks and Etruscans and later Romans, but predate them. The empire was very rich, mostly from trade with the Levant. For context, the Celtic Empire was at its height around the time the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem. There was an exchange between some Judean exiles living in the Celtic Empire and Ezra the scribe, in which they called Formosa, now Worms, the New Jerusalem. The Celts were legendary for their beautiful gold and silver items, as well as their outstanding iron swords and advanced armor. The Romans borrowed the Celtic designs for helmets and chainmail. Warriors had lavish burials that included many of the richest and also their military items. The term Celt comes from the Greek word Keltoi or Galatai, Galatian, and Latin Celtai or Galli, Gaul. They lived in the Alps and were the ancestors of the famous Alpine yodelers and hornblowers. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was from Salzburg, was likely of Celtic descent. Celts originally worshipped the sun, but Luke, a god of trade, was their chief deity during the Iron Age. They may have adopted the Druid system of priest judges from the British Isles when they conquered the Atlantic megalith builders, who in turn adopted the Celtic language, but there is more evidence that the Druid system originated in Gaul. Galatian Druids served as judges, mediators, and political or military advisors. Worship centered around oak trees and mistletoe. Humans were sacrificed at bodies of water, usually by decapitation. Sometimes wine flasks were used as a substitute for actual humans. It took about 20 years to train a Druid, and most who became Druids were boys of noble birth. Each Galatian tribe was organized into 4 septs or clans, each ruled by a tetrarch or chief, assisted by a judge, a general, and 2 deputy generals. Each sept sent 25 senators to a central shrine called Druidimeton. When they converted to Christianity, they were associated with the Arian movement, although they retained many pagan or Wiccan customs. The Lutheran movement originated in the former Celtic territories. Contrast this with the Atlantic megalith builders, who quickly became loyal followers of the Roman Catholic faith and espoused the Calvinist movement as Protestants. Megalith builders' descendants are associated with esoteric movements like the Freemasons, not so much Wicca. Paul's epistle to the Galatians is part of the Christian canon. Samhain's literal meaning is summer's end, and the Samhain festival marked the end of the long daylight hours and the beginning of short, cold days. This is when harvesting ended and winter began its chilly approach. This transitional time period was often associated with death. The Celts believed that this time of year was when the barrier between the living and the dead overlapped, and the ghosts of the dead could return to Earth to mingle with the living. Based on their beliefs, the dead could either bring gifts to bestow on the living, or they could come seeking revenge. It was believed that the spirits could cause trouble and damage crops as part of that revenge. For people so dependent on the natural world, this festival is a source of knowledge and comfort. To avoid wandering spirits, the Celts would disguise themselves with masks and costumes consisting of animal heads and skins, which often represented various deities. The Celts would also keep the bonfires burning all night to guide the souls of the deceased to their resting place. Over time, the roles reversed, and the Celtic citizens that dressed in disguise began imitating the spirits and going door to door demanding treats or threatening tricks. Another source of protection from the wandering spirits were the fires built on hilltops and in front of homes. The fires were symbols of the sun and believed to ward off the darkness of winter. The participants, in their desire to carry this protection with them, lit the bones of slaughtered cattle on fire and put them in hollowed out turnips, potatoes, or beets. These lanterns were often carved with scary faces to frighten away the spirits and were carried around by the Celts. From this tradition came the modern jack-o'-lanterns, now seen on porches everywhere at Halloween. The Krampus figure dates back to pre-Christian Alpine traditions. He is portrayed as a black goat man carrying a bathtub and a birch switch. The bathtub is used to drown or collect the souls of bad little children. Scholar Maurice Bruce said, "There seems to be little doubt as to his true identity, for in no other form is the full regalia of the horned god of the witches so well preserved. The birch, apart from its phallic significance, may have a connection with the initiation rites of certain witch covens, rites which entailed binding and scourging as a form of mock death. The chains could have been introduced in a Christian attempt to bind the devil, but again, they could be a remnant of pagan initiation rites." Scholar John J. Honigman said, "Masked devils acting boisterously and making nuisances of themselves were known in Germany at least since the 16th century, while animal masked devils combining dreadful comic antics appeared in medieval church plays. Austrians in the community we studied are quite aware of the heathen elements being blended with Christian elements in the St. Nicholas customs and in other traditional winter ceremonies. They believe Krampus derives from a pagan supernatural who was assimilated to the Christian devil. Krampus was blended into Christmas celebrations in the 1600s. Celtic society was administrated by Druids. The Celtic nobility were clean-shaven with well-trimmed hair, following the fashion of the time. Tweezers have been found on archaeological sites. Ancient Celtic society gave much more freedom and power to women than the Greeks or Romans did. Celtic women could sometimes become powerful tribe leaders and were also known to go to war during a time when Greco-Roman housewives were prohibited from conducting business, mostly sequestered in their homes under the supervision of male family members. The Roman genocide against the Celts was motivated by greed. General Julius Caesar literally decimated the Gauls, killing 1 million and enslaving a second million out of 10 million Gauls who lived there. They were conquered by the Roman Republic in 52 BCE. The Atlantic megalith builders were the victims of another genocide ordered by Nero and perpetrated by General Suetonius in 60 CE, over 100 years later. This was a huge battle in which Boudicca led the Iceni on Wattle Street in England. This war was mostly motivated by Nero's insanity. The Celts were ultimately conquered and absorbed by the Ostrogoths during the fall of Rome. If you like this video, please subscribe and keep checking this channel to learn how to get the most out of your DNA test results. Thank you for watching.